In a very special way, the chairman of today's discussion is none other than the Honorable Minister of State for Environment, Chief Sharon Ikiazo Esquire, who will be represented today by the brand new appointee of the Federal Government of Nigeria, the project coordinator for the hydrocarbon pollution remediation project, Dr. Giadom Ferdinand Dombari. Please a round of applause for Dr. Giadom. I'm aware he was here earlier and he will soon join us. However, we are lucky we have a co-chair for today's event, who is the Vice Chancellor of the Federal University of Petroleum Resources. To my knowledge, that is the only University of Petroleum Resources in this country. Please welcome with me, Engineer Professor Rim Ruke Akpofuri. We have distinguished personalities, people who know what it is to be here to discuss the events surrounding our team, which is geosciences, mining, and environmental sustainability. Please permit me to invite Professor P.D. Shekwolo, the Acting Project Coordinator, Hyper Cleanup of Hydrocarbon Impact Lands in the Niger Delta, who will be discussing geosciences, mining, and environmental sustainability. Professor P.D. Shekwolo, please, sir. You are welcome. A round of applause for him. To join Professor Shekwolo is a learned fellow, someone who is the principal partner in Tefe, Smith and Wills legal practitioners here in Port Harcourt. Of course, that is none other than Barrister Iniruo Will. I have the singular honor to invite to join the discussants the Managing Director, Geoterrain Nigeria Limited, Dr. Adekunle Adeshida, who is here represented by Mr. Toba Adiago. A round of applause for the representative of Dr. Adeshida. I'm aware that one of our discussants, who is the Vice Chancellor of the Ignatius Ajum University of Education, Port Harcourt, is going to be represented by the Dean Faculty of Education of the same university, Professor Vincent Asuru. Please a round of applause for Professor Vincent Asuru. I have the honor to also invite to join the discussants the Managing Director, African Natural Resources, Dr. Pata Gosh. Dr. Pata Gosh, a round of applause for him, please. Ladies and gentlemen, in our society, we respect our elders. And I'm going to, on behalf of the President of our society, recognize our past presidents who are here seated. With so much humility and honor, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to ask to stand up for recognition our past president, Chamberlain Oyibo, FNMGS, past president. You're most welcome, sir. We're indeed very proud of you, sir. Thank you for showing the way. Please continue to clap for our past president. I'm also aware that we have in our midst another distinguished personality, former president of this great society, a woman of substance, someone who has found it easy to show the way. I'm talking about none other than Dr. Mrs. Maria Stella Shonuga, past president, FNMGS, You are most welcome, ma'am. Ladies and gentlemen, please permit me to break here to reintroduce the chairman of today's event, who is none other than the representative of the Honorable Minister of State for Environment, Dr. Giado Ferdinand Dombari, Project Coordinator, Hydrocarbon Pollution Remediation Project. Please a round of applause for him. Perhaps my goggle head will be reconfirmed, but I'm sure that is the newest appointee on the federal government of Nigeria. A round of applause for him again. Before I call on the President to give his welcome address, may I please ask that we stand up for the national anthem. I'd like to invite my old president, none other than Allah C.D. Charles, FNMGS President, Nigerian Mining and Geosciences Society, to deliver his welcome address.
Our past presidents, fellows, members of council, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to Port Harcourt to kickstart our 57th annual conference. I do not have a written speech. What I have is an opening remarks. When the MC was doing the introduction, he mentioned that Nmgs was there in 1992. And then in 2002, 10 years later, and now 20 years later, we're in Port Harcourt. I hope he's not telling us that our next visit to Port Harcourt will be 30 years' time. I welcome you all to this pre-panel discussion. It is in the tradition of our society. On the first day of our conference, all these pre-panel discussion from which we gather the materials to produce the communique for this conference. It is unique for us because by doing so we are able to pass our message to representatives of government on the opening day. May I therefore welcome you all and plead that you remain attentive to all the discussions that are going to be held here. That will be of greater benefit not only to us, to our country, and to the world at large. Thank you, and please find time to enjoy the beautiful city of Port Harcourt. Forget about all the stories here about kidnapping. You won't, in Jesus' name, you'll never see that in Port Harcourt. So thank you and feel free. I welcome you all.
My president deserves a better round of applause. I told you in the Nigerian Mining and Geosciences Society, we value our elders. And though I will please ask for your permission to reintroduce a past president of this society, Professor Benga Okunola, FNMGS. Please round for recognition. Without wasting so much time, I would like to invite the chairman of today's event, Dr. Giado Ferdinand Dombari, Project Coordinator of IPREC, to please give the chairman's opening remarks. Thank you very much. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the president of the Nmgs, past presidents of Nmgs here present, the executives of council, members, fellows, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Petroleum Resources, the Vice Chancellor of the National Agro University, distinguished resource persons, heads of institutions, corporate members, student members, the press, and particularly the LOC. I welcome you all to this 57th Nmgs Annual International Conference and Exhibitions. And I'm especially a privilege to stand here today to represent the Honorable Minister of State, Barrister Sharon Ikeazo, to present this chairman's address. I congratulate Nmgs for a successful 57th annual conference that is kicking off today. And I appreciate the focus of this year's conference on the sustainability of the environment. We support the belief that geosciences has a leading role to play in the restoration of the environment. And this we shall find particularly interesting in the work that the hydrocarbon pollution remediation project is doing in Ogoniland to restore environments that have been polluted for the past 60, 70 years. The work is in progress and is on course and is moving to target. Having said that, I want to particularly thank the LOC for well-conceived conference themes, which shall border around historical and contemporary issues in the oil and gas exploration in Niger Delta, environmental responsibilities for hydrocarbon mining and development in the divested fields, flooding, coastal erosion impacts and climate change, planning transition to renewable energy resources, the black soot menace that we have in Port Harcourt and its environs, looking at environmental health implications of artisanal and uncontrolled refining of hydrocarbons in the Niger Delta, geosciences education and capacity building for professionalism in the extractive industry. And I know that when the conference convokes very eminent scientists and personalities around the table to discuss these key issues, we will find solutions to the intractable problems that plague our society. And therefore, I hereby, on behalf of the Honorable Minister of State, Chief Barrister Sharon Ikeazo, to wish the participants very fruitful deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. We're indeed very grateful to the Honorable Minister of State for Environment. You'll agree with me that the theme of this conference, geosciences, mining and environmental sustainability, is quite apt. And in that light, we have brought people to please discuss some of these issues surrounding it. Like I introduced to you earlier, Professor P.D. Shepolo will be telling us about the lessons learned from IPREP activities. Also, the Vice Chancellor of the Ignatius Ajiu University will be opening our eyes to Nigeria beyond oil, the transition from fossil fuel-based economy. The learned fellow in our midst will also be letting us know the environmental responsibilities for hydrocarbon and mining development in divested fields. And the representative of the MD of Geoterry will be opening us to the importance of geoscience knowledge in environmental sustainability. Ladies and gentlemen, with those topics, you know we're going to have a wonderful discussion this morning. I have powers conferred on me by my president. So I'm going to give each of our discussants 15 minutes, and we want to be fair so that we can, spend quality time to listen to you. So I think I'm going to call on our first presenter or first speaker, Professor P.D. Shekwolo.
The chairman of this occasion, Chief Sharon Bezo, ably represented by Dr. Helen Gedinaj, the project coordinator of Hydrocarbon Pollution Remediation Project, HYPRED, the co-chair, the vice chancellor of the Federal University, Ray, the president of the Nmgs, Chief Alabo, Charles, begging to the existing protocol to say the fellows of Nmgs, the LOC, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome. I've been asked to speak on the clean-up of hydrocarbon impacted lands in Niger Delta and lessons learned from the HYPRED activities. By introduction, before the slides are up, as we know, Niger Delta is the largest river delta in Africa, with an area of about 70,000 square meters. It is also the third largest river delta in the world, after the first, which is Ganges Delta in Indonesia and India, and the Okavango Delta that arises from the Angola highlands and empties into the Kalahari Desert and just disappears. That is the only delta that does not actually reach the ocean. The Niger Delta, as you know it, next slide, has about 9 states, and the whole of oil production is within the Niger Delta, led by the IOCs. We have about 18 multinational IOCs, led by HPDC, ExxonMobil, the airships of this world. And these activities have been going on. We started exploration since 1950. And in the late 50s, we had our first oil. Please go on, put up more slides. Next slide. In 1965, the first pipeline that transports oil, that is the Trans-Niger pipeline, was laid from Long River right down through Port Harcourt, through Mbekwe, and to Bonny. But it's important to note that the first major oil spill actually was on the TMP at Mbekwe. At Ijama Epugu, which is in Ogoni land, in Eleme government area, and that was 1969. That was during the Civil War, and it was a very major oil spill, because at that time, the operators of the TNP, which is SPDC Shell, were not around. They had already closed down because of the war. So the spill happened, and there was a very big fire that accompanied it because of the explosion. And it burned and burned for months. It was estimated to be about 3 months. And that impacted the land and the entire river system ran down to Imo River. And after that, we have a series of oil spills that have damaged the ecosystem. We have some records from 1970, and about 9 to 13 million barrels of oil have been estimated as spilled from 1970 to early 2015, but it's just an estimate, because actual volume cannot actually be established because of the fact that the causes of spills become more difficult to estimate volumes. The ones that we have been able to have a GIB, joint investigation visits, and the ones we can estimate volumes. But recently, in the 1999 and to date, we've had another dimension of oil spill incidents caused by artisanal refining and crude oil. Artisanal refining activities are not regulated, and we cannot estimate how much they are trying to be into the rivers and to the system. We can't be sure of the volume that have been spilled from that end. But it's something that we need to address as a big concern. HYPREP basically was set up by the federal government following the assessment of the environmental impact of the environment by UNEP, United Nations Environmental Program, and they were commissioned by the federal government in 2007. And they had a very intensive, thorough assessment, and the report was delivered to the federal government in 2011, August 4th, precisely. And that report clearly showed that there is significant impact of oil spills in the environment, including the groundwater, the soil, the vegetation, surface water as well, were all impacted, and it was reported as such. So following that report, the federal government set up a body to see how the recommendations can be implemented. So there was a technical committee set up to study and review the report and come up with a recommendation that the federal government can use to address the issues in that report. That led to the formation of HYPREP in 2012. So HYPREP was set up to address the areas, the recommendations that are implementable, and the ones that are not were deficits. So basically, HYPREP was born in 2012, but however, it could not take off effectively during that period for some reasons. And in 2016, when the present government was elected in 2015, their promise was to ensure that that report was implemented. So another HYPREP was born, established in 2016. And there was a government council was set up, and a board of trustees was also established. And in 2017, the Budget Coordination Office was born to actually implement that project. And work started. So basically, the mandate of HYPREP, I can summarize it in this way. HYPREP was set up to remediate and restore hydrocarbon impacted lands, to provide potable drinking water to impacted communities where the report indicated significant pollution, also to provide sustainable alternative livelihood to the impacted communities as a way of addressing the root causes of the impact, and also the fact that there have been also an adverse impact because of the spills, and to also undertake a health inventory to check those who have been exposed to this hydrocarbon, what is their health status, what can be done to address them. So those were the 4 cardinal mandates that were asked, that HYPREP was asked to look at. So basically, the activities of remediation involves around the contamination of the groundwater and the soil, and the restoration of the damaged vegetation, that's the mangrove vegetation, which is key to a lot of livelihood, the flora and the fauna, and to ensure that also the impacts in upland areas where artisanal refining is taking place is also restored. But again, the communities were given the role to ensure that activities that affect the environment are stopped, and they were asked to ensure that crude theft and illegal refining is stopped as a condition for cleanup of those shoreline areas. So that was the role given to the communities, host communities. So HIPREP have looked at the report, and there are 65 listed sites in what you call the fact sheets of the Union report. These 65 sites have been categorized for the ease of addressing the implementation process. We have broad categories called the complex sites. We have the simple sites, and we have the sites that require no further work, and we call them the end sites. The complex sites are called category A sites. These are the sites that have significant pollution in the groundwater and the soil, and their proximity to humans, that is inhabitants, to communities, the houses, is less than 500 meters. So they have direct impact on people's health, and the risk is very high. Category B are called the simple sites, and they may have low risk and medium risk, depending on the proximity to living inhabitants. So they have also impacts, predominantly in the soil, and we also have trapped crude that impacts on shallow groundwater within this category. I will have the sites that when we consider based on the TPH values, which is far below the risk-based level, is considered sites that no is required, category N sites. So we have used this category to help us in addressing the issues. And we, in conjunction with UNEP, decided that work of remediation will commence from the simple sites. We started with simple sites that had virtually low risk, and there were about 20 of them. And we are now going into the simple sites that have medium risk. There are about 17, 18. So if you look at this, it shows us where we are. Category A sites are 11 in number, category B are 38, category N are 16. That gives 65 altogether. Work has started in the medium one, that is the category B simple sites. We have 16 sites already completed. Work is going on before, but we have 20 that we have started work on. The other ones are being planned. So we gradually tackling the issues. And as we said, this is just the registered sites. There are still undocumented sites that have impacted and that also requires to be addressed. We have a lot of shoreline areas impacted by artisanal refining activities. That is very huge and requires a lot of resources to address. So we have a lot of work still to be done in this area. Next slide. So what have we used as our remediation standard? It's very important. We have elected to use a risk-based concept as a standard. The reason why we chose the risk-based concept is because we're addressing the risks to human health and environment. ECASPIN has a recommendation of an intervention level of 500 milligrams per kilogram. And that is because ECASPIN is controlled by DPR, Department of Petroleum Resources, and they're mainly concerned with the right of way corridor. Right? So, if there is a spill and TPH in the, there is a total mineral and carbon content of the soil is not more than 500 milligrams per kilogram, then there's no need for intervention. So that's intervention. But again, when we look at HIPREP works beyond the right of way. We work in the third materials, farmland areas. So we have done some risk-based analysis and come up with a risk threshold, what we call the screen levels for the remediation aspects, and we've seen that we did some modeling of risks, and it was we have to come up with the fact that when we have 1,000 milligrams per kilogram of TPH in the soil, that ensures that the uptake of hydrocarbon by plants, vegetables planted, will not be effective. There won't be any uptake. So we looked at that as a threshold of safety. So we chose to ensure that our remediation should aim at achieving a close-out level of 1,000 milligrams per kilogram, which is far more stringent than the intervention level of 5,000 milligrams per kilogram. It means more work, more cost, but it guarantees more safety. Next slide. Again, this is where our branch of science comes in selecting the remediation option or technique. There are many techniques that are in the literature, depending on what you are dealing with, either soil or groundwater. We have physical methods, we have biological methods, we have chemical methods, we have a combination of chemical methods, and we have human methods that we can employ in dealing with both soil and groundwater. We have the structure methods and the soil methods, structure methods, and other methods. But basically what I'm trying to say here is there are factors that are critical, and the critical factors is that you have to look at the contaminant, the stuff that you are trying to deal with. What is the nature of the contaminant? What is the mobility of the contaminant? What is the reactivity of the contaminant in the ecosystem, in the environment? How does it react in the hydrogeological setting? How does it react in the lithology and the soil type you are dealing with? That's where we come in as geologists, that we cannot select an effective technique without understanding these parameters. That's why we need to take lead in having effective remediation techniques. These are things that we must understand. You look at the pollutant, is it a crude oil? Is it refined product? How does this react? So that your selection will be based on informed scientific data. That's where we come in handy. Next slide. These are examples of what we have done in HEPREP. This is a setting for a biopile. A biopile is a form of bond reduction techniques. We have piping systems that bring out that enables aeration through compressive air in the course of remediation. And this is how we started it. And here we can see the setup here, and this is after remediation process. You can see the repetition is also the recovery already here. Next one. This is another method of remediation, which is more of land farming. Land farming in an engineered bioreserve. This is an engineered bioreserve. This is an engineered bioreserve here. It's a bioreserve. It's a pond wall that is constructed and lined with HDP, high density polyethylene liner, and it has a sump to ensure that the drainage or the leachates from the cell are well managed. So this is before and this after. It's also before, it's also after, to show how effective the process is. And as I said, we reduce the levels of contamination with TPH from whatever we started to at least 1,000 or below. Next one is also an example of work on site, and this is before and this is after. Next one. This is another before and after picture. This is visual amendment that is being used to ensure that we enhance the validation process. So it helps to make the hydrocarbon compounds more available and enhances the microbes' degradation ability of the hydrocarbon compounds. Next one is another example of before and after. Next one is also still example, we can say excavation. Sometimes we have depths going down as deep as 10 meters of impact. And we have to get to those 10 parts of impact to ensure that we get at all the atomic compounds for remediation to the surface. Next one. So lessons learned. Again, we have, when I say 2 major kinds of lessons or more, but I just want to consider them to social and technical. In working in an environment like Ogoni and other parts of Niger Delta, just to also say that Ogoni is just a tech point. Hyperx scope goes beyond Ogoni. It covers the entire nation, but more focus is on Niger Delta because that's the most impacted region compared to other parts of Nigeria in terms of agricultural companies. So Ogoni is a take-off point, the sugar point. And we've had a lot of community issues, but we overcoming them. There are issues bordering on land disputes. Who owns the land? They may just stop you from working for a long time because of land disputes. The issue of leadership trust. If you go to pay homage to your community, say no, you are not the leader, you are not the paramount leader. That can stall your work for a long time. There are also issues of local content management. A contracted community site is coming as a contractor to make profit. They are saying, what is in here for us as the locals? So you must define local content aspect of the work if you want to succeed. Otherwise, you get into a block, a wall. If you don't deal with the issues of the social lessons or the social issues, you will not achieve the technical results. You will be stalled. So that is very important. And technical issues we have as significant. First of all, we have to look at our weather conditions, our conditions that we work in. Basically, we have a weather conditions that there's rain almost throughout the year. So if you are doing ex situ remediation, which involves excavation of soil and treating it in either an engineered cell or on-site in an environment that will ensure that there's no repollution or also contamination. That aspect is very important. So you must know how to manage the flood, you must know how to manage the rainfall, and to ensure that you don't cause more harm than good. Next one. So this is an example of an engineered cell. And this cell is supposed to prevent cross-contamination or secondary pollution. And that is, it has this HDPE line, it has a sump, it's a sump here, yeah, and you can see that we have a what you call, this sand layer helps to protect also the liner and also provides a brace for easy. Okay, thank you. I'll soon. Okay, let's go on. Next slide. Let me just go fast. So basically, okay, I don't want to go through how engineer process is constructed. There's no time. Let's go. Let's just go down. Let's go down. Let me just go and summarize the problems down. This is an area. These are examples of work done. If you had time, to take us about 1 hour for me to go through very important lessons of how work has been done. Let's go on. This is a scarred area. So I don't know. Let's go on. Let's go on. Let's go on. You can just okay, this one. If you look at this, you can see this is a shoreline aspect. It's called SCAT. It's called shoreline cleanup assessment technique approach. Very important. Because if you are dealing with mangrove, the way you remediate mangrove environment is not the same thing you remediate a terrestrial environment. If you do, you will destroy the mangrove vegetation forever. And you can't be recovered again. So you have to understand that depending on the environment and the flora, you have to select a technique that fits your environment. Very key. So first of all, so we do this assessment, which is not very intrusive, which is using just shovels to check the oil levels, and we have a way of saying a visual assessment of the oil stream, as well as looking at the chemical data have compared very well. And we have seen this as a way of addressing the issues of assessment in the mangrove environment. Go on, let's go. Yeah, so go on, let's go on. I don't want, these are just the details that we'll go through. This more academic. Let's go on. Yeah, okay. Here, summary. We just summarize this. In summarizing, as I said, in addressing the community issues, HiPrep has come up with the guidelines and rules for conflict resolution and community engagement. That helps us to put rules together that guides us in how to address those issues. In the technical aspects, we have produced standard operating procedures, that's so for each type of, for every type of process, both the engineers world, both the engineered cell construction, the processes of managing the process of treatment, we have SOPs for each of them. Next one. And in the fraud management aspect, we are also recommended what additional measures may be taken. We may have to select issues of maybe selective placing roofs over some of the boundary areas to ensure that we limit the direct wrongful representation in the boundaries. These are things that we are thinking of doing to address the issues. Next one. And SCAT has helped us to calibrate, the visual aspect of observation with limited chemical data, and that has helped to speed up the process of assessment and also come up with more modern ways of addressing the concerns and the results that we get. So how do we stop this repollution? Repollution, we want to minimize repollution because of the fact that the boys are unemployed. We are preparing and we are addressing, giving them alternative livelihood skills to train them in areas that they can gain skills that will help them leave these dangerous activities of additional refinement that kills them slowly because of the suits and because of the fumes that they inhale every day. And this training is being made available free of charge for them and to give them a starter pack. So first of all, we have identified some youths. We are also giving them skills to help in the process of contractors work on site, and that's helping. We're also bringing them in to be some kind of security surveillance groups that help them, lead this kind of dangerous work so that there will be less impact of these activities in the environment. Next one. Also, water provision is part of the regulation of Union report, and we're going into addressing all the impacted communities, basically. In the next stage of water projects, we'll have covered all impacted communities, and we're going to be done that. So basically, I would say that our cleanup and remediation has direct benefit to the environment and also to the climate change issues that we're having. Because when you restore the environment, you are actually helping to address the climate change issues. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Professor P.D. Shikomo, who has just brought us into some of the lessons learned from the HiPrep activities. Another round of applause for him, please. I would like to invite the learned fellow in our midst, in the team of the panel of discussants, Barrister Iniru Wills, Principal Partner, Interface, Steele, Smith and Wales Legal Practitioners. Sir, though you are the learned fellow, but I have powers here. It's going to be 15 minutes, and I'm going to try to stop you. Thank you very much, sir.
I have been warned in advance, so I hope I can get some protection. The chairman of this event, Honorable Minister of Environment, represented by the new project coordinator of HiPrep, the co-chair of this event, Professor Apofure, President and former presidents of the Nigerian Geosciences and Mining Society, as well as fellows, who I think together make up the Council of States of the Society. Let me adopt the rest of the protocol. I don't have a slide presentation, but I have a paper that I would like to speak to. It's titled Environmental Responsibilities for hydrocarbon development in divested fields. And this is as much an attempt at a policy advocacy brief as it is a casual legal analysis. I start with noting environmental responsibilities for hydrocarbon development generally, starting from the pre-Petroleum Industry Act era. That is, starting from the Petroleum Act, which, as we all know, was the first major legislation dealing with governing hydrocarbon development in Nigeria. And there are a number of others, EGASPIN, the EIA Act, NOSDRA Act, and so on. What I noted first about the Petroleum Act, which governed the industry for about 52 years. Now, I don't mean to sound semantic or pedantic, but I couldn't find the word environment in that entire act. Maybe at the time it was a novel word, even though the dictionary says that word was first coined in the 16th century, or perhaps environmental sustainability was not such a big deal at the time. This, in my view, bespeaks a warped policy and legislative mindset that still sees communities as only worthy of being pitied or to be left outside the room where decisions are taken on matters like the environment that gravely affect their very existence and future. However, the Federal Ministry of Environment is constitutionally charged with the primary responsibility for environmental governance in Nigeria, without obviating the concurrent oversight of the Federal Ministry of Petroleum and the regulatory agencies that have been set up under the PIA. Now, we all know that recently, over the past perhaps 12 years, 10 to 12 years, there has been a spate of divestments by IOCs, that's the international oil companies, to domestic oil companies, our own indigenous companies. We call them DOCs. And they have just set in a third wave of that development. Easily some 30 oil blocks, not counting marginal fields, may have been sold by the IOCs to mostly DOCs till date. In the latest wave, Shell, which has always led the divesting pack, is seeking to offload 19 blocks, virtually all of its remaining onshore portfolio. 2 weeks ago, ExxonMobil announced its deal with Seplat to sell off its entire onshore portfolio, even though it was followed by reports that NNPC wants to exercise its right of first refusal. So we don't know the fate of that deal. But what is clear is that the IOCs are moving, at least in the first instance, moving away from onshore hydrocarbon development and moving to deep offshore, and perhaps later, who knows, they may move entirely out of Nigeria. But for now, they're leaving the onshore and moving to deep offshore. It is left to be seen if Shell is adopting the same route of local corporate divestiture as ExxonMobil. Because the ExxonMobil and Seplat deal is that Seplat will be buying ExxonMobil's local subsidiary, that is Mobil Producing Nigeria Unlimited. So it just buys the company and all that the company has. We don't know if Shell will adopt that model, but both routes lead to the same destination because the assets will change ownership. There are a number of reports that have covered these developments. Stakeholder Democracy Network has a report that properly tracks what has been going on. A report titled Divesting from the Delta, Implications for the Niger Delta as International Oil Companies Exit Onshore Production. Another report last August was released by Wood Mackenzie titled Shell to Divest Its Entire Nigeria JV Portfolio. I'll submit copies of my paper to the rapporteuring team with the links to these reports. Now I go to environmental responsibilities in divested fields. Two vital concerns related to the theme of today's discussion arise from the spate of divestments that have been going on. One is, for 60 years or more, we've just been told about some of the pollution incidents that have happened in the Delta, starting from the Ejama Ebubu case. Nigeria indeed is adjudged the worst petroleum polluted country in the world. So, for 60 years or more, you have a toxic legacy of perennial pollution. And now, the companies who directly or indirectly caused or are responsible for that pollution are moving away. So who cleans up the mess? That is the first question. The second question or challenge that arises is that we're beginning to observe that in a few years since indigenous operators have taken over from the IOCs, they are showing a tendency to be worse polluters than even the IOCs. So, how do we deal with these twin challenges? Now, these two sides of the same broad, what I call ecopathology, have led to deep apprehensions across petroleum producing communities and civil society, and I'm sure even professional communities like yours, whose potential for snowballing have led to deep apprehensions, whose potential for snowballing with speed seems to be coldly underestimated so far, making matters hopeless. Between several successive ministers of petroleum resources, NNPC as it then was, and the old DPR, there has not been an overarching policy thrust to factor environmental liabilities into the actual approval processes for asset divestments. Communities that flagged their environmental plight upon knowing of asset sales, often by sheer chance, were snubbed or treated as irritants or at best given the runaround. It is little wonder that a clean bill of environment is not amongst the conditions precedent proposed in Section 95 of the Petroleum Industry Act for the grant of the Ministry's statutory consent to an assignment or divestment of oil mining leases. On paper, however, there are some residual requirements for environmental diligence in the process of granting consent to divestments. EGA Speed, for example, the environmental guidelines and standards for the petroleum industry in Nigeria, provides that before a divestment is approved, there must be an environmental evaluation study of the particular assets. Questions however, arise whether that requirement is usually observed. If it is at all, what range of stakeholders are involved in the preparation and validation of the EES? Are the stakeholders closest to the environment, that is the host state governments and the communities, involved at all? If not, are oil field operators in Nigeria honestly expected to be entirely honest in the EES reports they turn in? and with the incestuous relationship between many regulators and operators in Nigeria, do we bet on the then DPR to have rigorously authenticated these reports when the transactors are dangling checks ready to pay the processing fees? There are lots of practical challenges that have arisen. Time may not be there to deal with all of them, but I'll give a couple of examples of divestment scenarios. In one of the fields divested in Bayelsa State, before the divestment, there was a major rig explosion. Now, the problems arising from that have not been properly dealt with. The project that was being worked on when that rig exploded did not have an EIA. There was anywhere else in the world that would lead to the revocation of an OML. But there was not even an EIA preceding the project. And in the course of the project, that rig explosion occurred. And then a few years later, the assets have been divested. So, in that scenario, who assumes the liabilities for remediation and for compensation and so on? The former operator or the present operator? In another divested field, and I'm talking from personal experience, in another divested field, the new operator claims that they were not allowed to conduct environmental due diligence before picking up the assets. And yet you have an entire landscape of repeated pollution in that field. In fact, in one of the fields in that oil block, interestingly, where oil production started in Nigeria, the Otoabagi, Oloibiri area. And you know that Shell had left there many years ago, abandoned the fields there, because they had finished production. Now, after a number of years, the wells have started to regenerate. I'm not a technical person, so permits, but the wells have started to, or the reservoirs have started to regenerate. So, crude oil is now seeping out to the ground and soaking surrounding lands and creeks. Now, you cannot say this is third-party interference. The pipelines have been removed. But if you go there now, I was there about 4 or 5 months ago, you will see that the entire area is, and this is fresh pollution. And there's a new owner, there's a new operator. So, who takes responsibility? These are all issues to be dealt with that, in our view, have not been properly addressed, even by the PIA, which took almost 20 years for us to pass. So the question is, in a jurisdiction like Nigeria, where we took so long to put a consolidated, or to enact a consolidated petroleum industry reform legislation, how come we have not been able to capture all these interests? There's also the big issue of decommissioning. That is a mighty elephant in the room that we probably have not taken notice of. There are some welcome provisions in the PIA concerning decommissioning, no doubt, because it provides, just like it did for the Environmental Remediation Fund, the PIA also provides for a decommissioning fund that operators will contribute to. And it also provides that former operators can be called back to take care of decommissioning. However, there's an escape route that it provides for operators. It says that where there is a new operator that assumes responsibility for decommissioning with the approval of the commission, that is NUPRC, then the old operator is free. Now, there is a major practical challenge there, which is, for example, what if soon after taking over the field, the new operator goes bankrupt? Just does not have the technical capacity or financial capacity to deal with this. Meanwhile, under the PIA, it has been released of all liabilities. Now, these are issues, big legal issues, that they are just emerging with the trend of divestments and with the new legislation that we have. And so, in the final analysis, the courts will have their say. There is an old American jurist who said that the prophecy of what the courts will indeed do and nothing more pretentious is what I mean by law. So I can come and give you all the legal arguments here, but what the courts decide will be what the law is. In the meantime, however, we must debate the issues. And my considered view, my considered position is that despite some of these provisions in the PIA that I've referred to, as between the host communities and the operators, both the old operator and the current operator would bear 100% liability for environmental damage. Because the communities were not involved in the consultations, in the approval process for the divestments. We have seen in practice that divestments take place. I have been involved, my firm has been involved in representing communities before divestments were concluded, and their grievances are registered, but total silence from the regulatory authorities. So how do you leave them with the short end of the stick when they are not given even an opportunity to be part of the process? I will go on to a few recommendations. There are so many that need to be made, but I'll just go on to a few. First is that the Minister of Petroleum Resources, in consultation with the Minister of Environment and NUPRC, should revoke the leases of some perennial polluters and reallocate them to operators with healthy records, at least in respect of 2 or 3 blocks. There has to be warning strikes, and there has to be the power of example. Even Chad, little Chad, our next door neighbor, has revoked, and this is over 10 years ago, revoked oil licenses on grounds of environmental violations. Second is the federal government, through the Federal Ministry of Environment, should inaugurate a Niger Delta-wide comprehensive environmental remediation program this year, modeled after an integration of the UNEP environmental assessment of Ogoniland, the ongoing high-prep cleanup of Ogoniland, and the border mediation initiative and remediation project. Concurrently, a comprehensive decommissioning and asset audit and upgrade campaign should be driven by NUPRC and the Midstream Regulatory Authority to abate a continuing surge in ecological calamities. Now, this is key because we all know what happened a few months ago in Bayelsa State. The ITO Santa Barbara Well 1 explosion that went on for about 38 days. Now, and I've also mentioned what is going on in Otabagi, Oloibiri area with respect to the first set of oil wells that are produced for Nigeria. Now, those are a foretaste of landmines that are scattered all over the region because there are sites that have not been properly decommissioned. There are facilities, wells that have been abandoned, but they are regenerating. All kinds of situations waiting to go off at any moment. And so it's important for a decommissioning campaign to take place. As SDS suggests, and in a couple of minutes I'll be done, as Stakeholder Democracy Network suggests in its cited report, an independent environmental regulator for the oil and gas sector is needed more than ever to monitor the divestment transition and enforce safeguards for communities and the environment. With due respect, I think that the Federal Ministry of Petroleum and the Nmgs, the regulatory bodies under it, are sort of conflicted, to put it very mildly, conflicted with respect to environmental regulation. There are too many transactional issues that they are primarily concerned with. There's got to be an independent environmental regulatory body that must be properly equipped, empowered, and funded. We know that the Federal Ministry of Environment, and I'm not being their advocate here, and the agencies under it, NOSCRA for example, these are the poorer cousins of the DPRs of former days. So they don't even have the respect of the industry. If NOSCRA or the Federal Ministry of Environment invites industry operators, and I'm talking from experience here, they would hardly bother because they don't respect the authority. They don't have the bite. They're not even equipped. There was a particular year when NOSCRA's entire funding for the year was 200 million naira. But let me quickly conclude. The Chief Judge of the Federal High Court should, under his statutory powers, set up a division of the Federal High Court in at least every senatorial district in the oil-producing states to make room for communities to access the Nigerian legal system. At the moment, communities do not have access to the Nigerian court system. Yes, you may have heard of a few. Ejana Ebubu, they just won their matter after 30 years of litigation. Bodo had to go to the UK. Bile and Ogale are in the UK. They've been in the UK for over 5 years. But these are just, a few out of thousands of communities. In Bayelsa State, every year, there are over 300 to 400 spills happening every single year. But most communities lack the resources, and you can't put them through one door. There's just one court in Bayelsa State. In Rivers State, maybe in Port Harcourt, maybe 2 federal high courts for hundreds, if not thousands, of communities that are aggrieved. The PIA should be amended to mandate all petroleum mining leaseholders, with the possible exception of marginal field operators, to be publicly listed on the stock exchange, so that they are subject to the disclosure and corporate governance standards that come with that. It's interesting, if not disappointing, that hasn't happened in Nigeria. Mobil, Shell, and so on, in their home companies, they're all potent companies. So you hear of shareholder activism. Sometimes shareholders will take a position to the boardroom, to the annual general meeting, and insist. And so a lot is going on. But in Nigeria, it's still private. As in Egaspi, whose legal enforceability is open to debate, the PIA should be amended to also set a clean bill of environmental health and community consultations as conditions precedent for the grant of the Minister of Petroleum's consent to any divestment. There's a school of thought that Egaspi is not even legally enforceable, even though conventionally it seems to enjoy more respect because it's a DPR product, in the industry. But that provision needs to be elevated to the level of primary law in the PIA. And now that the PIA is back to the National Assembly for amendment, I think there's a window for that. The Constitution should be amended to put environmental responsibility on the concurrent legislative list and thereby enable state legislatures and high courts of states to respectively legislate on them. The Federal Minister of Environment should also drive a community environmental conscientization and preparedness program. Now that's also key. There's no time, but one of the major challenges, because we talk about environmental responsibility here. Environmental responsibility is not the preserve of the operators. It's also not the preserve of regulators. Communities have to be the first defenders of the environment. Unfortunately, and I am sad to be the one to say this, one of the biggest impediments to environmental justice is the sense, not all, but the sense of community leaders who stand between the future of their communities and their pockets. The President should sign the NOSGRA Act Amendment Bill into law to properly empower NOSGRA. The agency should be rigorously repositioned, and adequately funded for effectiveness. And its head office moved to the oil-producing region where it will be useful, away from its current domicile in Abuja, where it has been a net liability to the interest of environmental responsibility. There's much more that can be said, but at the end of the day, what we do with our environment, in the final analysis, whether in divested fields or across all hydrocarbon blocks, is a measure of whether our environment, which is our entire natural heritage, ranks as a value in our claim to civilization. It's up to us. Thank you.
I'll invite Mr. Toba Adiago of Geoterrain to please talk on the importance of geoscience knowledge in environmental sustainability. Mr. Adiago.
A very good afternoon to everyone in this meeting. I greet the chairperson of this occasion. I also greet the chairman of this our association, the president. I greet all my professors, all protocols duly observed. I want to categorically say that my FD, Dr. Adeshida, sends his greetings to everyone in this forum, and he tells us his own reserve apology to everyone for his not being available for this. We are looking at the importance of geoscience knowledge in environmental sustainability. So our presentation outlines going to go those introduction, the objectives, what is geoscience, the pyramid of level of learning, geoscience applications in environmental sustainability, the added value of geoscience knowledge in environmental sustainability, and we will go look at the conclusion and recommendation. Next slide, please. So we look at what is environmental sustainability. It's the responsibility of all to conserve the natural resources and protect the global ecosystem to support health and well-being now and in the future. Historically, human actions have continuously compromised long-time ability of exploited natural resources, and because we exploit these natural resources, we are also affecting the environment. So we need the application of environmental sustainability methods to making sure that the environment is protected so that people, generations after us, can actually live very well in the same society. Consequently, the competing needs of environmental sustainability and human development in both the natural world and society has limited us to flourish in an eco-friendly manner. And we are very concerned about an eco-friendly manner. So what are the objectives of this, our importance of geoscience knowledge? Firstly is to review the geoscience knowledge in environmental sustainability, to emphasize the importance of geoscience knowledge in achieving environmental sustainability, and lastly is to reduce or eliminate the risks that is associated with the environment by deploying geoscience knowledge in geohazard identification that affects the environment. Globally, because the world is controlled by energy, and we're looking at the energy consumption that we use to move both the economic and the social responsibility of human beings. So we look at the current population is over 7.9 billion as of February 2022. And out of this, the world population lives in the urban area. 55% of it lives in the urban area. Globally, buildings consume 1/6 of all the fresh water, while we consume around 4 trillion cubic meters of fresh water a year. Also, the annual crude oil production is recorded to be 99.74 billion barrels, which is 4.7 billion metric tons. And in Nigeria, we have 704.7 million barrels of oil that was produced in year 2020, according to NMC report. And out of this, 23,000 barrels, above 15,000 barrels of crude oil has been sprayed, which represents like 0.03% of the oil produced. Therefore, the challenge facing our society to become sustainable and large, it requires specialized problem-to-solve skills. So we can actually look at how we can use geoscience knowledge to mitigate against every environmental challenge that we have. Next slide, please. So we look at this graph shows the total world energy consumption from 1971 to 2020. And we have that we have the oil has continuously increased over the years, while coal diminished. Natural gas is also actually increasing. So if we look at the pie chart here, we look at the natural gas is actually increasing in when we compare 1971 and 2020, we see that natural gas has increased. The oil production in 1971, the global oil consumption in 1971, and when we compare with the global oil consumption in 2022, in 2020, we see that we have some values that can actually compare with themselves. So next slide, please. What is geoscience? How do we actually use this geoscience knowledge in solving our environmental challenges? Because we want to live well in the society. We also want our children to also live well in the society after we live. It's basically the study and definition of the earth's minerals, the soil, the water, the energy resources, and how these systems, how they interact. So, as geoscientists, we use various tools to interface with different experts. We have the chemists, we have the engineers, we have the public health professionals that we want to also relate our findings to. So, the geoscience knowledge helps us to actually give them the right information on how the environment is being impacted as a result of our activity. However, to gain the capacity and capability to practice as a geoscientist in Nigeria, NUC has approved that chemistry, physics, these are the basic science courses, as entry requirements for us to enter into the university. And in Nigeria, there's a record of 205 universities as of 2021. Out of these, 99, they are private universities. 49, they are federal universities. 57 are state universities. And out of these universities, these 205, 56, which represent 27.3%, produce geoscience graduates. 4% of these geoscience graduates, they are in private universities. 48% is in state universities. And from there, from the skill knowledge, from the skill level, you move to the mastery level. So the pyramid of level includes the 4 levels: the basic awareness level, the knowledge, the skill, and the mastery. Deep learning stays at the awareness and knowledge levels. Career and opportunity for success are actually limited. So we need to deploy the next level for us to move to the next pyramid of success, for us to actually be important in environmental sustainability. So the application of knowledge, which is the skill, and the mastery, which is the ability to consistently get results with our skills. The science skills generally in environmental projects will be applied in 2 approaches for result-oriented development projects. We have the intrusives and we have the non-intrusive methods that we can use. The intrusive methods have always been deployed most times by our geotechnical people. They use the hand auger, the drill. We've also seen that we can also use the non-intrusive method, which is very fast, which can actually help us delineate where we have contaminants. It could also help us to do various other things. Our discussants, they have told us where we have skills all over. When we begin to take samples all over, we begin to consume more money. The economic aspect of it is not taken into consideration. However, when we deploy the non-intrusive geophysical methods, we'll be able to actually understand the nature of the subsurface. We understand the lateral extent of the impacted area in the area of study. So by applying geoscience skill and knowledge, a geoscientist can develop these skills and attain a level of mastery through consistent participation and contribution to solving problems. So geoscientists, they are problem solvers. We can actually solve problems that can help our environment to be better. So we look at this slide and show the principles, the various tools, the various techniques, and the results that we can actually get from all these various techniques. So I take, for example, we look at the electromagnetic waves. We can deploy our GPR for it. We can also deploy the VLF. And all this helps us to understand the methodologies. It helps us to understand the subsurface utilities that are available in the subsurface. When we have pipelines that are being destroyed, busted, spilled into the environment, when you don't have an understanding of where the pipeline is, with your GPR in the study area, it can help you to determine where the area is. And with other methods, you can also know where the contaminants are, and you can actually determine it. Next slide, please. So, what are geoscience applications in environmental sustainability? As we have said, they are the custodians of the mother heart. The doctors keep saying that, okay, they can help us unravel human beings. They can do a scanning to show you where you are, what ailment you have. So also, geoscientists can also tell us where problems are. So, geoscientists, they are custodians of the mother heart and they are the doctors of the mother heart. And we can use geoscientists knowledge in groundwater management, locating shallow gas geohazards, in hydrogen gas storage, and renewable energy projects. Next slide, please. These are examples of what we can use our tools for. Application of geoscience knowledge in environmental sustainability. This is one of the jobs that we did as a company. We acquired a PPR over the lagoon in Lagos, and the problem was that there was a lost 6-inch pipe that needs to be found out of the lagoon before they will deploy divers to go and look for the pipe. But with geoscience knowledge, we can actually retrieve the pipe, know where the pipe is. If it's not retrieved out of the water, the problem is that the pipe gets rusted, the heavy metals comes out of it, and that side of the riverside, people take it to water whatsoever, pollutes the environment, and it's also injurious to their health. So for us to sustain environmentally, we need the application of this geoscience knowledge. Another example, please. Next slide. This is basically for effective and efficient pipeline decommissioning. What decommission pipeline, we will see that the right of way has actually been delineated clearly here. We can also, because we have abandoned oil pipelines in which they don't even know where those pipes are. With this application of geoscience knowledge, you can know where those oil pipelines are that have been abandoned. Oil leaks can come out of this. The oil leaks are prevented from being spilled into the environment because you can actually look where they are and they can be decommissioned. And instead of the hit and miss method that involves you to excavate this area, looking for where the pipe is actually laid, the vegetation cover is being destroyed. But with this application of the science knowledge, we are safe. Next slide, please. We have talked a lot about crude oil contamination. Crude oil contamination, as been said by our earlier discussants, we can deploy the science knowledge to know the extent to which the area has been impacted. And when we deploy this science knowledge, It will also help us economically. How does it help us economically? Instead of seeking various boreholes at different points, with this geoscience knowledge, you can actually delineate areas where the hydrocarbon actually impacted the environment. And this helps us reduce cost. You can reduce cost, you can go straight to where the environment has been impacted and remediate them effectively and efficiently. So the nature of crude oil contaminants can be achieved using geoscience skills. Next slide, please. And as I said earlier, we have, as a case study, we have a study area of 204 square meters. And when we deployed geoscience knowledge, we were able to see that the area that needs to be remediated is actually 35 square meters, which is 17% of the total area, which helps to save cost for those people that are actually doing the remediation work. Next slide, please. So we also look at some of the methods that we can also use, which is the resistivity method, which characterizes areas that are domestic waste, which can impact the soil as well as the groundwater. Next slide, please. This is a very classical example in which areas that are impacted were delineated with the use of the electrical resistivity method. And the big part of this slide shows areas that have not been reworked. The hydrocarbon contaminants were cleanly delineated. And for anyone, you can quickly go to this area and remediate this area instead of remediating the whole extent of the area. So that's the application of the science storage. Next slide, please. We also conducted some hydrological projects over water, and we know that there are various bridges that are constructed over water. When bridges are being constructed over water, we also have shipwrecks. We have shipwrecks and areas that are not stable for pipes to go through. So with knowledge of the science, you will actually know areas that will have wrecks that you don't need to put your piers, so that when such construction are done, they are sustainable. We don't have it actually failing. With the knowledge of society or geoscience, you can actually position your anchor locations in the right place. Position your piers in the right place so that there will not be disruption. Next slide, please. So we also know that we are challenged in this country with power. With geoscience knowledge, you can know where you can actually put your dams. You can know the volume of water that can produce energy for you. Because when you put in your turbines, it can help you to generate energy inside the water. Those are hydroelectric power generation. So with this knowledge, geoscience knowledge can actually help deliver this nation from the incessant power shortages that we have. Next slide, please. We're looking at exploration and production, and we're looking at some of the examples that are very, very paramount for successful production of hydrocarbon. We look at shallow gas pockets. Shallow gas pockets, with the 2D high resolution seismic data, you can identify where you have to drill your wells so that you can avoid shallow gas pockets that are within the area of study. Next slide, please. And we're looking at the carbon sequestration. We're looking at renewable energy. We are transiting from the fossil fuel into renewable. How does geoscientists, how do we contribute our own portion to making sure that the environment is sustainable? Because the zero carbon future that we're looking at is speaking into environmental sustainability. So, as geoscientists, we can actually look back into depleted oil and gas fields. We can actually take the understanding that lies within those areas, the petrophysical properties, the subsurface knowledge, so that when CO2 is being injected back into the subsurface for storage in the carbon sequestration project, it is safe. It is not leaked out through faults or the seal that is not protecting it effectively and efficiently. So we look at how we can understand the four-way deep closure that exists in the area. Next slide, please. So we look at the added value of the science knowledge. So, I'll take, for example, the soil remediation that has been discussed extensively. Excavation, the conventional method is the excavation and remediation of large volume of soil. But with the application of geophysical survey to delineate contaminant flow for remediation. With the application of the science knowledge, you can delineate areas that are actually impacted, and the added value for us as a nation, for a company that is doing this, is the reduced scope of work, cost reduction, and timely project delivery. Next slide, please. So, as I conclude the base of recommendation, this keynote submission is to sensitize us on the importance of geoscience contribution towards environmental sustainability. We also want to say this, that sustainable geoscience will become an integral part of the geoscience curriculum and syllabus, so that geoscientists that are coming out of the institution, they start thinking about how they can use their knowledge of the heart to solve environmental problems and seek out solutions in a variety of important areas. Retiring industry experts should be invited to universities to teach and to train students for experiential knowledge. Also, geoscientists should be proactive, do environmental impact assessment studies, so that we can see ahead of what the project, the impact of the project is going to do on the environment, it's going to have on the environment, so we can go ahead and mitigate against salt using our geoscience skills and tools. Lastly, there's also a need for international cooperation. There's a need for engagement. There's a need for cross-disciplinary approach to solving environmental sustainability. And this one will help us to reconcile geoscience and society for a sustainable progress. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Geoterry. Geoterry has in the last years participated effectively in geoscience education. Please permit me to invite to this podium to talk about the transition from fossil fuel-based economy, Nigeria beyond oil, the representative of the Vice Chancellor, Ignatius Ojuru University of Education, Professor Vincent Asu, the Dean of the Faculty of Education. I know he's a teacher, but he will not talk too much today.
Good afternoon, esteemed guests and organizers. Thanks for representing my Vice Chancellor, Professor Okechukwu Nutuku, who would have loved to be here personally to present his discourse. Unfortunately, due to some urgent assignments, he called me up at about 9 a.m. to come and represent him here. I thought I was just coming to sit down, listen to one or two things, not that I'm supposed to do a discussion. So he didn't have to be any paper, so I have no formal paper to present. I just read from the brochure that we are supposed to discuss on the topic Nigeria beyond oil, transition from fossil fuel-based economy. When I will attempt to give a background, we know that for us in Nigeria, oil accounts for well over 90% of our GDP, even though the official statistics do not state that for obvious reasons. And we also know that as a result of this, we are solely dependent on oil, and there is every need for alternative source or sources. And besides that, as social scientists, we know that we operate more of what we call a rentier system. Rentier system where we are not in full control of even the oil. We know we have cases of divestment now taking place. Even at that, we see that this thing depends solely on the IOCs and other collaborators. But what we're saying as Nigerians is that from all indications, the game is becoming up. So it becomes necessary that at this point, we should begin to think of alternatives. What are the viable alternatives? What do we do on this? We also want to place on record that over these years, our oil economy has not been able to have effective and adequate backward and forward linkages that will propel other alternatives. Our excursion to other economies, we see that they have been able to effectively and efficiently deploy their sources, the gains from the oil economy, into other areas that will have some forward and backward linkages. So it becomes proper, it becomes imperative, it becomes necessary for us as a nation to begin to ensure that we have some level of viability in these aspects of forward and backward linkage. The derivatives from oil in all its forms, how effectively are we deploying them to ensure that we have a sustainable economy, we have a stable economy, we have an economy that will be able to stand every form of shock. Every economy, every economic system faces one form of shock or the other, depending on some international playouts. As we may see today, what is happening in the international economic system, the Russian war with Ukraine, has affected negatively a lot of economies in the global system. So those that are not ready, what happens? It should have an eye-opener to us. But for us, we feel, and rightly too, that we should begin to effectively and robustly expand into other areas using our God-given oil. One of such areas we'll think about is manufacturing. We recall that some years back, as students in those days, we knew of pan and other manufacturing outfits, Leyland and all the rest of them. We know they were assembled in Nigeria, but I think they were able to effectively use that to expand the economy. For those of us from this area, we are sure in those days after school, you could walk through Tasamade industrial area and you get one or two, you get jobs here and there. Michelin was there, employing thousands of people and all that, National Port Authority and a whole lot of them. So that hub, the Tasamade industrial hub, what is the situation today? If we should tell ourselves the truth, that place has become a shadow of its former self. That is also why we have a lot of youths who are not employed or gainfully employed, because the economy is gradually shrinking, because that forward, the expected forward and backward linkage has been distorted up seriously. So we need to do a sit back and see how we can effectively inject life into the economy using our oil, using the oil economy as a fulcrum into such injection. It is also necessary that we begin to also think of expanding seriously a knowledge-based economy. Like the literature will tell us, the economic system of any country is not dependent on how much you have. It's dependent, it's knowledge that determines how you use the economy, how the economy expands, or how the economy is to be injected. Unfortunately, we have not been able to build a sustainable knowledge-based economy that will act as the force into ensuring that other economic activities are fully expanded. No thanks to our political structure, no thanks to the political system, wherein we take much of some other things instead of being futuristic, being proactive in what we do. We have a clear call on all of us. We owe ourselves and our generation and generations to come that responsibility to ensure that we do something proactive to save our future. I came across a saying that the poor man cannot sleep because he is hungry. The rich man can also not sleep because the poor people are hungry. And I had also told them in my community that if you build a glass house and there are some other thatch houses around, the day the thatch house will go and flame, in course of man would also want to salvage his thatch house. So we put ourselves a responsibility to ensure that we expand the economy appropriately so that the shock, when it comes, like we have now, will be appropriately absorbed. And the poor among us, the youth and the rest of them, will be gainfully employed. And very importantly, we must also say that agriculture offers us a very viable option. Take a trip to Israel and other countries. Take a trip to Japan and all that. These are countries that absolutely do not have any natural resource in the real sense of the word. But they've been able to take care of a whole lot of things because of the agricultural potential, which they have maximally utilized. With the expanse of land, with abundant sunlight, how come we've not been able to effectively mobilize and put into use our agricultural sector? A lot of things are important today. Unfortunately, we eat what we do not consume, and consume what we do not produce. This is most unfortunate. So we are saying that we should deploy effectively into this sector and see how we can mobilize our youth. As a secondary school child here in Port Harcourt some years back, we had the school to learn project. We had our colleagues who finished from university, who were posted, they were given farmland, giving their money and all that. They went to the house, they were happy and all that. All of a sudden, everything just came down. Everybody wants to be either an oil worker, work in government, be a politician and all that. It's not the best time for us. For those of us who are in the classrooms, the faculties and departments of agriculture are the least subscribed. Universities of Agriculture, I'm explaining that the University of Agriculture, they have now introduced new programs in education, in business administration and all that. Those universities are almost going extinct. But how many people apply to study agriculture in the university? The reasons are well known, the obvious, well known. So we are saying that there should be some form of effective rejuvenation, some effective and deliberate effort to ensure that we get some of these things done, because our youths are getting agitated, and rightly too. A lot of times we feel it that they are not just, we are not saying that the government or the company should employ everybody. If we make deliberate efforts to provide an alternative source, it will be a plus to our GDP, to the economy, and as well to the individuals. It's only when the individuals are buoyant that the economy will be buoyant. And the shift or the unnecessary or due emphasis on oil company jobs, government jobs, politics and all that will be reduced. You go to the communities today. I started a small farm and people were crop. That is the only thing you bring to us is to start a farm in the village and all that. And they laugh at you, they say you probably you out of their wits and all that. It's because they need some reorientation. You need to tell them, we need to educate them that look, this is the best way to go, and we must take the lead as a government, as companies, as establishments, as NGOs, and even as individuals. So we have viewed that the time to act is now before it is too late, because we are getting to a point where things will go out of hand. So we are recommending that the arable land should be put into effective use. There should be farm settlements, like the Sunday model, which we had some years back. All of a sudden, all that just disappeared. Fish farms here and there, Puguma, Bacana, and all that. What has happened to us? What is happening? And these are things that would ordinarily keep our youth busy and provide food for us. And lastly, I must say, personally speaking, the bonfire, I call it a syndrome, must be revisited. If you go to economic history of industrial development in China, in Japan, and all that, you see how they started from community engagement, community firms, and all that. It's a pointer to the fact that no matter how crude the process may be, is a pointer to the fact that these boys or these girls or these men, however we describe them, have a thinking of what will be done in a time of emergency. What we expect is that government should provide an opportunity, call them together, see what they are doing, how they are doing it. If the system is screwed, how do we define the system? How do we integrate the system into this 21st century science and technology method? It may not be as pure as what is obtainable in share, what is obtainable in developed clients. But we must have a way of fashioning an event of it. How do we make this work and make it better? How do we reduce the hazard inherent in the bonfire syndrome, as we call it? When how crude it is, we must begin to think of assembling those boys, bringing them together, probably giving them the proper orientation and direction, and possibly licensing them as a way of control, so that we begin to fashion. Well, we are not saying that we should go reinventing the wheel. That's not what I'm saying. But I must say, and rightly too, that the big IFM, the IOCs, see them as a threat. They may be rightly, but we must find a way of bringing them and saying that we refine what they do and ensure that the development of petroleum resources and all the related institutions should begin to learn, should begin to see what they are doing and see how we can refine them and bring them in line with best practice. These are submissions. Thank you, and God bless.
Ladies and gentlemen, getting more interesting. I'd like to invite the representative of the Honorable Minister of State for Mines, and Steel Development, Ojeka Oklebe Patrick.
The chairman of the forum, my president, immediate and past presidents, the College of Fellows, distinguished guests, my colleagues, the new generation geologists and geoscientists. I stand before you to present the speech of the Honorable Minister of State, talking governance and talking environmental issues in the mining sector, regulatory instruments, implementation, and the impact of mining to the environment. He is inevitably absent due to other official commitment and has directed me to present his speech. All protocols observed. I welcome you all to this 57th edition of the Nmgs Annual International Conference and Exhibition here in Port Harcourt. The LOC requested me to discuss on addressing environmental issues in the Nigerian mineral sector, regulatory laws, policies, and practices. Given the critical nature of this topic, permit me to give a brief background, the regulatory framework, and implementation strategies in ensuring safer and best mining practices in the Nigerian mining sector. Here we're talking governance, we're talking the role of government, the impact of the role of government, and then we will look critically at the compliance by the operators, to whom regulatory instruments are developed and presented. The background here, mining activities, as we know, have important economic, environmental, labor, and social repercussions on local and global scales. While the sector provides vital raw materials and energy for a large number of industries, its activities are still commonly considered as a threat to the natural surrounding, with environmental effects on air, water, soil, and landscapes. As a result, the early 21st century saw a renewed debate about mining and its sustainability, owing responding to public concern about the current degradation of the environment. We will take now on the environmental issues, the impact of mining. Mining activities result in severe and significant adverse environmental effects, both natural and social. It has been reported that the solid mineral sector is the second source of pollution after oil. Some environmental impact of the mining activities include degradation of natural landscape. Just as the oil spillage degrades the ecosystem in the Niger Delta, the activities of miners and mining have serious effect on the natural landscape, to the extent that the topsoil is degraded and becomes sterile and is not able to create job. And one of the notable negative effects of mining is the destruction of this natural landscape, creating open spaces in the ground and generating heaps of rock waste that cannot be easily disposed, especially by artisanal miners. These phenomena are prominent in different parts of Nigeria where commercial or subsistence mining or quarrying had occurred in the past or is currently taking place. The alteration of the landscape by mining operations has also created problems of erosion in the mining localities, with the result that most of the open cast pits are filled with contaminated water. 2. Degradation of farmland and vegetation. Land degradation is occurring everywhere that surface mining takes place, and is worse if the mine site is abandoned. Land degradation refers to the reduction or loss of biological or economic productivity and the complexity of land, reducing carbon storage in soil and vegetation, driving the loss of biodiversity and accelerating climate change. It is a process in which the value of the biophysical environment is affected by a combination of human-induced processes acting upon the land. Mining activities in most cases result in the loss of farmlands due to the large tract of hectares of mining companies that the mining companies acquire. The loss of farmlands have been identified as the main cause of confrontation between mining companies and the mining host communities, as the communities depend on their farmland for livelihood. 3. Water pollution. You will all agree with me that operations of mining require quite a large quantum of water, but its dispatch is an issue, particularly when there is a cost of water close to the place of activity. Water pollution has been suggested to be the leading worldwide cause of deaths and diseases, accounting for the death of more than 40,000 on a daily basis globally. 4 main problems of water pollution are common with mining operations. These are chemical pollution of groundwater and streams, siltation through increased sediment leak, increased fecal matter, and dewatering effects. Mining affects fresh water through the heavy use of water in processing ore and through water pollution from discharged mining waste and seepages from tailings and waste rock impoundments. Increasingly, human activities such as mining threaten water courses. Water has been called mining's most common victim. If you find yourself or find your community within the presence of mines, then you will understand what this statement is saying. Mine waste generally include all other factors that have been mentioned by the past speakers. Mining activities generate huge amount of toxic waste that impact negatively on the ecosystem causing harm to the environment generally and lives on Earth. Acid mine drainage. Acid drainage and contaminant leaching is considered the most important source of water quality impact related to metallic ore mining, and is considered one of the mining's most serious threats to water resources. A mine with acid mine drainage has the potential for long-term devastating impacts on rivers, streams, and aquatic life, and becomes accelerated and intensified by mining. Ponds and pits. Those of us who are conversant with the location of Plateau State, you will understand quite well the effects, negative effects to the environment of the number of ponds and pits that litters the landscape of Plateau State as a result of mining. Surface mining has created mining pits, man-made lakes, pools, and ponds, which have great effect on both the people and agricultural practices. Pit takes form when surface mine tubules and open pits fill with water, either through passive or groundwater discharge, surface water diversion, or anti-pumping. A lot of people and animals have fallen into mine ponds and died in Nigeria. Heavy metal contaminant. Heavy metal is a term used to describe elements with a density greater than 5 grams per cubic centimeter, or about 5 times as dense as water. Solid mineral deposits are a major source of heavy metals. Those most commonly found in contaminated sites are lead, chromium, arsenic, zinc, cadmium, copper, mercury, and nickel. Of these metals, arsenic, cadmium, chromium, lead, and mercury are considered to pose the highest threat to human health because they affect multiple organs and are carcinogenic, while others are toxic. Mining and the metal production is a major source of pollutant and pollution of the environment. Now, with all of this enunciated, we are looking at steps being taken by government to address issues of the environmental surrounding mining and the mining environment. The Department of Mines Environmental Compliance is one of the technical departments created during the reform in the Ministry of Mines and Steel in 2005. Its operations took off in March 26, 2006, and its creation was backed up by the Section 16, Subsection 1B of the Nigerian Minerals and Mining Act 2007. The vision of the department is to have a mining industry that is environmentally conscious and maintains ecological integrity, and a mandate to enforce environmental compliance in mineral resource development in Nigeria. Just as I heard one of the speakers did mention here that Nigeria, which is an agency of the Ministry of Environment, has challenges in executing its mandate. Similarly, government is challenged with it because most of the miners in the field deliberately refuses to comply with the legal rules. Accordingly, the department has, through the provision of the relevant section of the law, carried out her mandate to ensure the protection of the mine sites to achieve environmental sustainability in the solid mineral sector. The requirement for the mining sector. Specific requirements have been put in place for every stakeholder in the mining sector regarding environmental obligations. The requirements are to ensure that the pains due to mining are reduced and the gains maximized. For this, several documents across the environment and mining sectors have been published to guide on environmental protection. They include the National Policy on Environment 1989, revised 1999. Most of the activities here, Section 411 of the National Policy on Environment in consideration of the growing attention given to solid mineral sector and the tendency for this to cause environmental degradation, require that mining activities be carried out in an environmentally sound manner. In order to achieve this objective, the policy made it mandatory that mining projects should be preceded by an environmental impact assessment, in line with the provisions of the EIA Act of 1992. It further provided that mining and quarrying activities be carried out in such a manner that will prevent haphazard opening of quarries to minimize soil erosion, land degradation, and uncontrolled damage to vegetation, wildlife, and water sources. Prescribed operational standards aim at minimizing dust and noise pollution from open quarries and to reduce the impact of dust on vegetation, surface and groundwater, and humans. And finally, minimize environmental degradation associated with beneficiating of refining of minerals. Equally too, the Nigerian Minerals and Mining Act that established the department has its own provisions that has to be taken into cognizance by the operators. Also, the Mining Act has its regulation that further brings down and gives interpretation to simplicity for operators to understand what the laws provide. Overall, government programs have been a collaborative one in view of the fact that there are other agencies. Directly, the Ministry of Mines and State Development does not have the national power over the digital environment landscape. Therefore, there is a strong collaboration between the Ministry of Mines and State Development, MEC, and Nigeria to make sure that each of these instruments are compliant and carried out together. The implementation strategy includes joint review of environmental impact assessment of mining projects in collaboration with the Federal Ministry of Environment, a review of environmental protection and rehabilitation program, coordination of environmental protection and rehabilitation forms, a review of mine closure and decommissioning plans, mining, monitoring and environmental auditing, review of annual reclamation statements, and review of well storage plans by mineral title holders. Community issues include conflict resolution, liaison with relevant agencies of government with respect to social and environmental issues involving mining operations, mine closure, and reclamation of land, national environment monitoring and compliance enforcement. Finally, I want to just enunciate the steps that have been taken by the Ministry of Mines and State Development to curtail and to reduce drastically issues of abandoned pit and the land degradation. Furthermore, in pursuit of sustainable mineral development, the Ministry of Mines and State Development has carried out the following activities. In 2008, we commissioned the inventory of abandoned mine sites in Nigeria with the aim of reclaiming and restoring the acreage degraded by mining activities, much of which were abandoned by expatriate miners in the late 60s. The response of inventory showed that about 1,200 critical abandoned mine pits were identified, and government has taken steps extensively to reclaim the most critical abandoned mines pits. But of course, this has its challenges too, because some communities have converted, in as much as we, as geoscientists, understand that each of these pools is heavily contaminated. The communities have converted them to economic use. And when there is effort to reclaim that, there is a strong revolt. But notwithstanding, government is proceeding with its own activities to clear off. Secondly, the issue of ore processing that has led to the death of over 400 children and women, both in Zamfara and Niger states in the previous years, equally has led to the establishment of safer mining processes that will engender the appropriate mining processes. Recently, and as we speak, and ongoing, government is establishing what we call cluster projects. One each in the 6 geopolitical zones of the country for the purpose of coordinating the artisanal and small-scale miners, and then imparting and extension services to guide them the proper way means of operations. All of this, the objective was to determine the mine sites that are contaminated by heavy metal from mining activities in the country with a view to planning effective mitigation measures in order to forestall possible environmental and health hazards. Thank you all for listening. Thank you.
I would like to invite the Managing Director, Africa Natural Resources, Dr. Pata Ghosh. Dr. Pata Ghosh, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. The chairman of the conference, honorable presidents and vice presidents, distinguished personalities, officials from the ministry and government departments, all mining engineers and geoscientists present here, ladies and gentlemen, with all protocols observed, myself, Partha Ghosh, and Group Mining Head for African Natural Resources and Mines Limited, and also for the African industries. It's a great honor and privilege for me for getting this opportunity to participate in this prestigious panel discussions of 57th Nmgs International Conference and Exhibition at Garden City at Port Harcourt. I am here to speak about the success that we have achieved and the contributions and challenges that we are making into the economy of Nigeria and the challenges that has been faced in the solid mineral sectors. African Industries was formed in Nigeria back in 1971, and we are celebrating our 51st year in this country. With the blessings of the presidents and the ministry, Honorable Minister of Mines and Steel, Honorable Minister of Finance, and all other ministries, today as we stand here, we have 18 manufacturing plants in this country successfully operating. We have started our journey with chemicals and fertilizers. Then we started our steel making way back in 1980. And then we have been into the power generation and distribution, various other industries like glass industries, tiles industries, paving stones, also making the processing of recycled battery into lead ingots up to 99.99% to export to various European countries. We have been producing steel, and we are the largest producer of steel in this country, producing about over 1 million tons. And we are the only company in the sub-Saharan Africa to have the GAS UK certification. That means we are producing steel in this country as per international standards. And after meeting the domestic requirements, we are also exporting our steel to various neighboring countries. But we have been producing steel through secondary route, that was scrap metal. Then, with the support of the Ministry of Mines and Steel, we had to implement the backward integration, that is to produce steel out of raw material iron ore. And then we formed the mining division, way back in 2012, and then we started exploring into the solid mineral sectors, initially for iron ore, coal, and then today we are establishing the world-class integrated mining project at Ujeni village, Kagarko local government area, Kaduna state, investing over $600 million. That particular project is going to generate over 3,500 employment. And if not, there was challenges due to pandemic, we would have commissioned that plant. And that plant is a testimony of success of solid mineral sector. And this is one of the first in kind, not only in Nigeria, in West Africa. Because it is a totally integrated process plant. Like we are mining iron ore, and within the same mining lease we have established our crushing beneficiation plant. From that beneficiated ore, which will be upgraded to 60% plus Fe from the low grade of 20% Fe. We are going to produce pellets, and that pellet will be fed to the sponge direct reduced iron plant, and will be producing direct reduced iron. And that direct reduced iron is a replacement for scrap metal. And it will enhance the productivity, efficiency and quality of steel that we are going to produce in this country. And at the same time, as we are producing the direct reduced iron, it is actually a heat-based process. So the waste heat which is generated out of this process, instead of leaving into the environment, which would have caused environmental pollution, we are tapping it into the waste heat recovery boiler, and we are generating power. So that power plant is going to generate over 35 megawatt of power, and this is going to power the entire process units, mining and everything. The surplus power will be supplied to the national grid. And we are hoping that, though it's a huge project, but we are hoping that in this year we are going to commission it at least for the first phase. And this, when we started it, like we have to start with the exploration. That exploration means we have to do it as per the international standard. We got our resources certified by SGS Canada, and it was as per NI 43101. And after the resources were certified, then we had to do our mine planning, process flow development, the entire design and structural fabrications of the entire plant with the help of certified professionals, the competent persons. And then we have to do our environmental impact assessment, not only to meet the requirements of the national standard, but also to meet the requirements of IFC, that is International Finance Corporation and World Bank guidelines. And I am happy and proud to say that the entire project was approved by the IFC, and we got it financed by the international lenders. So that is also a success, which is saying that, if you follow the process step by step, the mining projects also can get financed from the international lenders. But it has to be certified, the resources has to be certified, everything has to be certified for the international norm. With these few words, there are challenges also are being faced, like in terms of security, in terms of infrastructural development. I would request the ministries to support for infrastructure, especially in the railway sector. But because the mining industry, it becomes economically unviable while we are only depending on the road transportation. The road transportation is very expensive, and if we can do the railway transportation, it will actually reduce the cost of transportation by 1/5, and it will make most of the mining projects viable. And this project that we are developing in Kaduna, it will actually make a full stop to the importation of steel. And we can produce all the varieties of steel products in this country. Thank you very much.
I'm going to request that you give Mr. Dr. Gosh another round of applause. The high point of everything he said to me was the fact that we are going to have 2,500 employment opportunities for our geoscientists. Please, another round of applause. So if there's anybody you can attach to today, Dr. Gosh is that person. And I also want to let you know that African Natural Resources and Mines is one of the sponsors of the Nigerian Mining and Geosciences Society. A round of applause for them. In the same vein, the Nigerian Geological Survey Agency is a sponsor. A round of applause for them. The Nigerian Steel Raw Materials Exploration Agency is another sponsor that requires our attention. Vaja Mines Limited is a sponsor. Shell is a sponsor. Megacorp is a sponsor. The Federal Ministry of Environment is a sponsor. Severset Group is a sponsor. The Kenyan Mining Company is another worthy sponsor. ProMind is a sponsor. And the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, is also a sponsor. Not forgetting Damatan, a major sponsor, and the Tectonics Group. This is a round of applause for all the sponsors. When you are in my position, you have so much of the big boys behind you, you wield a lot of powers. We're going to take just 2 questions. Our past president, Dr. Chamberlain Oyibo.
Thank you. Thank you for your award of doctorate right now. I have two comments quickly. One is the BIA after 20 years set up community with 2% also for communities. Now BIA is being implemented and we have not heard anything about the communities. It has an effect. That comes to my second comment. When the man called Mofire, I don't think many people here know what Mofire is. It took me time, even as a rivers man, to understand what they do at Mofire. It was my driver who told me what Mofire was. This so-called artisanal refining is not it's no artisanal. It's crude theft. So when somebody says government should look at it and streamline it, how do you streamline something that is being stolen? The economic model is that they steal the crude oil. So how do you make money once they pay for the crude oil? It's a very dangerous thing. I have relations who have died because they do it so crudely. So government should look at the community aspect. Many of the small companies have what they call community trustees, 5% of their profit and so on. They're ignoring the government issue of 2%, but government is still quiet. They cannot implement the PIA without telling the people that they are implementing the community issue. Because Port Harcourt people, the greatest problem here is soot. What is this? Around the Niger pipeline and all the major pipelines, there are hundreds of refineries. Where they get their crude from those pipelines. Now, Nigeria cannot meet its OPEC, even with the Ukraine war. We are producing 1.6, when we should be producing over 2 million. Where is the rest? It is being stolen. So government should please look at it holistically so that we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. A round of applause for our past president. He did indicate that he now has a PhD, but you know, he's a distinguished alumnus of the University of Ibadan. And my head of department is here. My vice chancellor is also here, so we can actually conclude on that. And Engineer Unko, a distinguished alumnus, is here. Thank you very much, sir. You're welcome. Professor Smart Obira, please.
Thank you so much, MT. I have questions or comments for the person who represented the minister on regulatory laws, policies, and practices. I think I heard him say that the Department of Mines and Environmental Compliance has challenges enforcing the law because the miners refuse to mine according to the act. Oops, I have so. So if that is so, does it mean that the department does not have enforcement team, or that the team does not want to do its job the way it should be done? The another comment or question will be on mine site contamination by heavy metals. I want to know if the Department of Mines has a link with researchers and all other workers with the environmental scientists who work on this contamination of the mine environment by heavy metals. The reason why I'm asking this is I did some job some time ago for UNESCO around the red zinc mines. We made efforts to communicate our findings to the government. Up to today, no response. So I think it will be necessary to have a proper link or a department in the mines and compliance that will be responsible for some of these. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Gender bias, you must not be accused of it. So I have found a way to ensure that one of our women must talk. And so we have Mrs. Omidiro, one of the directors of the Oyo State government. She's also a member of council. Mrs. Omidiro.
Thank you very much. I'm the Director of Mining Operations in Oyo State. All this we are saying is good, but the implementation, do we carry it out? When we are on the field, and even the mining law does not favor the community people at all. And I'm so glad that the minister has already mentioned it, but political bureaucracy. By the time those community people complain, the state does not even have any say at all. But facing a lot, even the people at the mines, they can't cope with these people, the operators. They are so elusive, and even as I'm saying, the political bureaucracy, most of them, by the time they get to on top, the mighty people, you will find out that that law, they will use it against the states and also against the community. So, I will employ the minister policer, and he has mentioned it. There is need for the review. It does not favor the state and the community people. There is need for that review. You said 1992, they are obsolete. 89, and we are in the 20th century. 21st century. So, there is need for this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So, I'll take a response from the minister. Honorable ministers, on stage, sir.
Thank you. Sorry, I was trying to see how I can pass this right up to the secretary. If I can pick it from him. Yes, in as much as the reference were made to laws enacted in 96 and 99, I think if you listen to me well, I had mentioned the revised versions someday, so some of them. But be it that it is, issue of review, no law is cast on iron. Therefore, within the space of time, they are amenable to reviews, to bring into terms with the modern tech and realities that surround us. before the National Assembly, yes, efforts are being put up to review. Ministry of Environment, that is the custodian of environmental issues in the country, is already in motion putting up some of this need for review. But of course, the stakeholders have a role to play. Sometimes if you do not push the government, then there will be this idea of relaxing on their oars, thinking that all is well. States' contribution into a national law is critical. Therefore, it's a welcome idea. But of course, as you say, I'll pass the message to the Honorable Minister, and then we'll see how, in conjunction with the Ministry of Environment, drive issues where stakeholders must be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I'd then like to invite the co-chair to give the closing remarks, Engineer Professor Rim Ruke Akpofuri, who is here. Thank you very much, our Vice Chancellor.
Thank you, MC, for a brilliant job done here today. It's a brief remark, because I have two roles to play here, remark by the co-chair, and then I'll also stand in to give the closing remarks by the chairman, who is who have left for other official engagements. Let me first and foremost commend the council for the choice of this year's theme. It's very apt as it's applicable to the economic growth and development of this country. Let me also commend the choice of the discussants, who have actually done a lot of job in their presentation. Thank you very much. A quick comment, sir. We need to state it here that total petroleum hydrocarbon as the only parameter for saying that this contaminant site has been cleaned up is faulty. It's faulty. Experiments have shown, results have shown, that the quality, the health quality of soil is alive, it's not dead. The health quality of soil does not depend only on TPH. It depends on other 38 parameters. Google it. Health quality index of soil. Health quality index of soil. Even the soil that a contaminant that have been removed 10 years ago, take the sample. Test for those 38 qualities. You will know the health status of that soil. Thank you. Secondly, is the need for HYPRED to also quickly go into the entire Niger Delta area. Their assignment, their function is not limited only to good land. Other communities are already getting agitated. You can start, if not for the limited funds, you can start by doing what we call site assessment, state by state or community by community. Let them know that one day HYPRED will still get to their backyard. Just focusing on Ogoni cleanup because of the union report of how many years standing is not enough. Move out of your comfort zone. Go into the communities, look at identify the sites that are already in PPRO or not crime, but confirm the sites and also know their status. It will also help. The issue of divesting based on this issue of PIA is quite well, but the presenter also almost gave it away to say that you cannot hold the previous holder to his responsibility of the environment. If you are buying a property, the liabilities and the assets of that property are clearly stated. Today, the National Assembly has set up a committee to look at the assets and liability of NNPC and hand it over to NNPC Limited. These are clear distinctions that must be made. Geosciences and its relevance, the education, all of us pass through it. That's why that your presentation on the importance of geosciences is quite adequate. It's quite adequate. I commend it. However, I want to appeal. The government cannot fund those equipment stated here alone government cannot fund it alone. Industries, please come to the universities. Look at what we have. I commended John Oburu for coming to my university and building up a lab dedicated for exploration geophysics. And one other company also came up recent and also donated some software that we can use in predicting groundwater reserves. Quite commendable. Industries present here, please come over. Start from Federal University of Petroleum Resources. We will embrace you. The issue of transition, embrace the issue of transition to zero fuel. I'm quite happy at the last training or conference in Abuja, where the minister said that we should not be forced into overnight transition. The transition from fossil fuel economy should be phases. And we also need to be very careful with this developed world. The developed world, whenever they come up with a technology, they want to sell it to Africa. Neo-colonialistic point of view. They want to sell it to Africa. When they sell it, they will force you to jettison your own economy and embrace what they are bringing. They're talking of renewable energies. What is the percentage of renewable energy in the UK? Google it. It's less than 2%. Less than 2%. What is the contributor of renewable energy to America? America still depends on coal. And what they tell us, they say coal is a dirty energy. That's right. Dirty energy. They say it's dirty energy. So dirty coal. What are they doing? The future synthesis. The air synthesis. That's what they are using now to clean coal. Can't you clean fuel? You can clean it. What is it? It's not because of the carbon dioxide. How much is Africa contributing to the global climate change? How many industries do we have? And then they say, no, go for renewable energy. Today they came to my university, took a whole area of land, and they started building solar panels. And the whole of February now, there's no energy from that plant because of the weather. They no, buy it, say it's good. You need to substitute. Transition to energy, transition to fossil fuel. Then you have to be very careful. However, I want to add that government should look into the following. Once you can do that, we can jettison fossil fuel. One, bioeconomy. Bioeconomy is the use of biological resources. Biological resources for the production of useful products like biotextiles, bioplastics, bioethanol. We can generate them from waste. And these are what we have in abundance. Take a trip to most of these rice millet, this in the north. You'll be marveled at the huge quantity of rice brands that we have everywhere that we can convert. Just part of taking the cellulose, break down the cellulose, and we have some renewable materials. Bioeconomy. Nigerian government should focus on bioeconomy. Google the contribution of bioeconomy to Spain economy will be shocked. Even in South Africa, Google it. The contribution of bioeconomy to the economy of South Africa. You'll be shocked of how much they have. The employment alone in Spain is marvelous. The other one again is blue economy. There is no state in this country without a water body. NIW, sir, am I not correct? There is no state without water body. What drives the economy of India? What drives the economy of India is blue economy. And we have the one massive. Go to the entire Niger Delta area. The creeks, the creeklets, the water body, the rivers, the streams, the oceans are valuable. If we tap into blue economy, you will be shocked. All of us will say, forget about oil. Then one of us talked about digital economy, which is knowledge-based economy. It's also very relevant. Then the other one is also methanol economy, or what you know as also the hydrogen economy. These are all economic channels this country can tap on. And we'll say, yes, we cannot build a face out the fossil fuel. because they want to force us. We're not official of climate change, but I'm contributing to climate change. The representative of the Vice Chancellor, when he was making his presentation, I was wondering that if this presentation he gave today here was just between few hours, he was told by the Vice Chancellor to come here. So which means he was asked, he was prepared, he would have taken us very, very far. Thank you, Prof. Thank you. Because he was talking about agro-based economy. And we wish to say that this pre-conference has been very, very encouraging, has very, very interesting. It shows that within the next 3 or 4 days that we'll be here, is going to be loaded with knowledge-driven geosciences, mining, and environmental sustainability for the growth and development of this country. Thank you.
You should not be surprised when a Vice Chancellor speaks. And for a Vice Chancellor of the only University of Petroleum Resources, a Vice Chancellor who is an engineer and is also a professor, a Vice Chancellor who has a compound name with his name. This is a round of applause for that. Ladies and gentlemen, permit me to ask us to give ourselves a round of applause. We have had a session that we cannot discountenance. So many things have been said, and I'm sure our panel of rapporteurs have taken it down, and it will form part of the communique that will be presented to His Excellency, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, tomorrow. I want to thank our discussants, but my role is not to give the vote of thanks. I'm going to invite Professor Inuve Apokoje, Professor Apokoje, but I know he's running around to ensure things out because he's the chairman, technical, but I know his brother is here, my own mentor, teacher, and benefactor, Professor TKS Abba, to please come and give the vote of thanks.
Thank you, the MC, the chairman, who was very ably represented by the newly appointed coordinator of HIPRE. We still thank him even though he's not here. Well, I think he had to do this at very short notice. All the same, he did a perfect job. And then next to him, the co-chair, my friend, environmental activist and advocate, excellently performing Vice Chancellor, who has brought new perspective to this panel discussion. I'd like to thank you for taking time off your very busy schedule to be here with us. Thank you so much. Now to the panelists. Let me begin with Professor Peter Shekolo. Thanks for the wonderful job. This is like a parting gift to the community, sharing your experience, your successes, and challenges. Well, thank you very much. Next is the Honorable Minister of State, very ably represented by Patrick Ojeka. Thank you so much for the excellent piece of work you have done. Next, it's Barrister Iniru Wales. We had a legal perspective to all of the discussions that we had today. And so I'd like to say much thanks to Barrister Wales, to Dr. Adeshina, ably represented by my friend. Thanks very much for bringing the technology aspect. People now see what GP around us. People now see how you can integrate resistivity and all other technologies to improving your site investigation. I'd like to thank you for that new perspective. And then I'll turn to my friend Patagosh for even coming. When I met him in Engineer Comp's office, it was a very brief meeting. He was there, and then I invited him, please can you come and give a brief talk? And without hesitation, he accepted. Not just accepting, he also immediately committed to sponsor an aspect of the program. So I'd like us all to join and give him a very warm appreciation. And subsequently to the panel, to the rapporteurs, they were recruited at very short notice, and they all, agreed to serve. The rapporteur work is not an easy job. I'm sure they won't sleep this night until they have produced the committee. So I'd like to thank you for volunteering time, energy, and for this service. Thank you very much. Without calling you by name, I sincerely appreciate you. And to the audience, we started with a full hall. We are closing with a hall that has spilled over. So our places have been multiplied. I'd like to thank all of you, very busy chief executives who have come here to share with us. You see that the fact that the size of the audience increased and everyone is attentive, even at this point when people should have been sneaking out, that they are still there. It shows two things. One is that the subject of discussion is very topical. The other thing is that the audience is attentive. I saw many people, several people nodding their heads in agreement and some in disagreement. It shows that they are following the discussion. I want to thank you for your patience. I want to thank you for your commitment. NMGS will continue to be there for you. Play your part to take NMGS to greater heights. On a last note, I would want to say a general thank you to our friends, members of the press, and friends of NMGS. Thank you. And this is the one I should thank. It was a few days ago, I recruited and said, look, I've seen this guy. I think he's fit for this job. Let's give him a shot. And I told him he was going to anchor this program. He accepted it without hesitation. I'm sure you agree with me that he did an excellent job. A round of applause for him.
Thank you very much, sir. When you have shoulders and parts to fly, it makes it possible for you to do so. And thanks goes to all our teachers and our elders for giving us the launch pad to soar. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you all very much for coming. We appreciate it.